Hello and welcome to a bit of a different video here on the channel, where we're going to be taking a look at the UFC for the next month and also a UFC Abu Dhabi preview. Now, if you don't know, I am quite a big UFC fan, mixed martial arts fan. Make sure to go and join the Discord down below, because when the events are on, we're usually in there discussing what is happening. But yeah, I am a big MMA fan, general sports fan, but this is one of the ones I'm most interested in, and it's a very interesting time at the moment for the UFC. Obviously, we've got Abu Dhabi coming up this weekend after this video is released, and then the month of August, which is looking like a banger. It has been a great summer for the UFC so far, off the back of what was a pretty rough start to the year, and after this summer we have some absolutely banger events that have just been announced. Pereira Ankalaev 2, we have Merab versus Corey Sandhagen, Tom Aspinall making his first undisputed defense against Cyril Gane. We also had Yuri Prohaska versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. announced in there. What a fight that is going to be. But the focus for now is on what's going to happen within the next month or so, and we start off with this UFC Abu Dhabi card. It's looking like an absolute banger of a card, with Robert Whittaker headlining against Reina Derrida. First of all, though, we will take a look at the prelims and what they are saying. I should say, by the way, there's the poster for this Abu Dhabi fight night. It's quite a good one. I'm quite a big fan of it. You know, not too much going on, but I really like the colours and the design to it. So on these previews, I guess we're going to just take a look at some of the fights, any interesting fighters who are fighting, and see what's going on with them. So I guess on this prelims card of this fight night, we should probably start down with the heavyweights at the bottom. Martin Buday takes on Marcus Buchecha. That should be an interesting fight. Obviously, there's a ranking on the line for whoever is the winner in that one. We've got Mohamed Yakia versus Stephen Nguyen. I think the odds were in favour of Nguyen in that one, so two interesting fights to open up the night. We've got Ibo Aslan returning against Billy Elikana. Now, Aslan was actually fighting against, it was Ion Cutelaba, submitted in that fight. A lot of people really favoured him, and he really had a disappointing performance, and he comes up against Billy Elikana, who was also submitted in his last fight against Bogdan Guskov, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be an interesting fight at light heavyweight, and we'll have to see if the Aslan hype train will get back on. We've also got Amanda Ribas versus Talitha Ritchie. Now, Ribas was in that main event, the first main event of the year, against Mackenzie Dern. She lost that, the rematch. This fight will be an interesting one to see if there's any contenders, new contenders in for that title at strawweight, which Zhang Wei Li currently holds. At strawweight, the fight is already really set up. I mean, there's only two options for Zhang at the moment. It's either Virna Jandiroba or it would be the title fight against Valentina Shevchenko if she does move up, which is something we obviously want to see, but there's not really been too much discussion about it just yet. I would expect to defend first, or maybe if there's a win in this one for Ribas or Ritchie, one more fight for them and they could be within that title picture. It's Davy Grant versus Damon Blackshear. After that, Damon Blackshear, one of the only fighters, one of three fighters who got a twister submission in the UFC. Another one of those, if I'm not mistaken, is Bryce Mitchell. Do correct me if I'm wrong, and he is on this undercard, and the other one being the Korean Zombie. Those three with those twister submissions. But yeah, Damon Blackshear, very active fight. He faces off against English prospects in Davy Grant, so hopefully that'll be a banger fight, and it'll be an interesting one to see. I've got Blackshear in this one, but who knows, could be a surprise in that one. We've got Muslim Salikov versus Carlos Leo in the welterweight division. Leo favoured for this one. It'll be interesting to see how that one goes down. And then the featured prelim. Now, this was supposed to be on the main card, I think. I don't know why it's moved down. It's Bryce Mitchell versus Saeed Nurmagomedov. Now, Bryce Mitchell moving down to make his bantamweight debut. It's going to be an interesting one to see. He did say that after he fought Jean Silva that he felt really small compared to John Silver, and I don't think John is the tallest. He's not very tall. They were around the same size, but I just think in terms of actual size, I think he was having issues with that. That's why he really struggled with the grappling, knocked down quite a few times. And it should be an interesting fight. Saeed Nurmagomedov, it should be a fight he can win. Obviously, he's coming off a loss against Vinicius Oliveira, so we'll have to see how that goes. But overall, for a prelim card on this fight night, it's not too bad. If we go and take a look at what we're dealing with on the other side on the main card. This is looking like a very, very good main card. Now, it is a shame that the co-main was pulled out. It was obviously a rare 5-rounder co-main which didn't have obviously a title fight in it or anything like that. It would have been Movsarevloev versus Aaron Pico. Obviously not going ahead anymore. It would have been a good fight to see if Pico could obviously live up to that expectation, but Movsar, I don't know why he's taking that fight really. He could be still in the title picture. We'll get onto that a little bit more later when we look at UFC 319, what's going on there. But anyway, this card here, we've got Nikita Krylov versus Bogdan Guskov, two light heavyweights. It'll be interesting to see how that goes down. Obviously Krylov, very quick turnaround from UFC 314 to get here, especially off the back of a knockout. It is a quite quick turnaround, but he's decided to take the fight against Guskov. Guskov did win his last fight, if I'm not mistaken, and Krylov obviously on that loss, so it'll be interesting to see what goes down there between them two. We've got Asu Almabayev versus Jose Ochoa. Almabayev was supposed to fight Temenov, I believe it was, but then he tested positive. Almabayev had an interesting fight against Manel Karp, obviously stepping in on quite short notice. Manel Karp was an interesting one, using a few dirty tactics in that one with the eye pokes and stuff like that, but Asu Almabayev's got quite a bit way to go if he wants to improve and get into that title picture. But should he get a convincing win here against Jose Ochoa, which is not an easy fight, but he should be able to get the win, and if he does, he could get himself back into title contention with a few more wins. We've got Shara Magomedov versus Marc-Andre Barriault. Now, obviously, Shara had a very interesting fight last time. It was in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. Now he returns to the Middle East. Is the hype train derailed? I mean, he's had some interesting fights, and obviously that Michael Venom Page fight did expose a lot of his weaknesses. Michael Venom Page is a tough fight for anyone, but will he have the same kind of ability? I think Shara Bullet is a bit of a factory, what do they call it, a factory plant fighter or something like that, where they just produce them and they're giving him a fighter who should realistically be in Barriault, but we'll have to see if that hype train is still there around him or whether it has been derailed. Into the co-main event, this one will be 3 rounds now instead of 5 rounds. Petr Yan fights against Marcus McGee. This is another very, very interesting one. I can understand why Petr Yan is taking it, but at the same time, I feel like the fight against Umar Nurmagomedov was definitely on, and I don't know why he's gone for the McGee fight. I guess he wants to stay active. A lot of people saying that he is the fight to go on and beat Merab, but with Merab being booked now, Umar needs a fight. I don't know, it's an interesting one. I don't know how long Umar's deciding to take out. There obviously is some other guys still in that title picture. Sean O'Malley is still there. It's an interesting one really, but I think this will be an interesting fight. I would go for Petr Yan to get the win in the end, but Marcus McGee, who knows, he could throw up a surprise. There's definitely some level of threat and competition there that can't be denied, but against a very experienced Petr Yan, former bantamweight champion, who knows what will go down in that fight. And then it's to the main event, Robert Whittaker against Reina de Ridder. 5 rounds for this one. You wouldn't think it would finish within, or it will finish within 5 rounds. It wouldn't go the distance. Very, very good fight to make. Good matchmaking. Reina de Ridder is obviously on the 3-fight win streak, and he's in some very good form. He is, one of the fighters who've come from the different organisations and is finally turning up. He's facing against Robert Whittaker, who is at an interesting point in his career. He really does need a win if he wants to stay anywhere near that title contention. Obviously coming off the back of a loss to Khamzat Chimaev. He fought obviously quite a good wrestler, and his submission game very, very good. He was able to submit Robert Whittaker in that fight, and Reina de Ridder poses similar threats. His submission game is just as good, you'd argue, as Khamzat Chimaev, and he had obviously that run in the One Championship 2 division champion. He's looking like a very good contender. I am a very big fan of Reina de Ridder from what I've seen in his last few fights, and I do think, in my opinion, that de Ridder will get this done. I think he will get the submission around round 3 potentially in this fight, but it is going to be a good one, and we can't sleep on Robert Whittaker too much. He is still a very, very good fighter, just faced a person who will be in the main event in the title fight with we'll get onto that later, but yeah, it's what's led him to that position. That win against Robert Whittaker. So a very, very good main event in Abu Dhabi. Quite a quick turnaround for Reinier de Ridder and for Robert Whittaker. It's been quite some time since his last fight. So that is the fight card for this weekend, looking very, very good. And who knows what we've got coming up in the next few fights as we move on to the flyweight fight here in the Apex. We return to the Apex for the first time in 9 weeks, I think it is, or something like that. We obviously have an undercard to go with this. There's some interesting fights on this, in particular Tresean Gore returns off the back of his loss to Marco Tullio. In particular, I think the most interesting fight is Nathan Fletcher versus Rinya Nakamura there. As you can see now, Nathan Fletcher looks like quite the prospect. I think he had a very, very good fight in his last against the Irishman. What was his name? Loughran, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, at UFC London. Very unfortunate to not win that fight, to be honest. So it's looking like quite the interesting fight set up there for Nathan Fletcher. Tough fight against Nakamura. I believe he lost his undefeated record this year, if I'm not mistaken. So it will be interesting to see what goes down in that one. Other fights on these prelims, we've also got Nick Klein and Andrei Pulayev. Klein lost to Mansour Abdul Malik in his debut. It was a very brutal finish, but he's returning on this card, so it's a decent undercard for this main card, which, as main cards go, is not too bad at all for an Apex card as well. We've got at the beginning Kevin Vallejos faces Danny Silva. Vallejos is obviously quite an interesting prospect. That should be a good fight. We've got Neil McNee, who returns to faces Eliu Zalewski. Dos Santos obviously coming off a loss against Chidi in his fight. I think it was at the Apex, a co-main event a little while back now. Neil McNee, obviously the most wins in welterweight history. This is two veterans fighting in what should be a very, very interesting fight. We've got Nora Conol, who returns against Carol Rosa. I think this is good matchmaking. Conol had a very good fight. I think it was UFC 314, if I'm not mistaken, and she looks like a very, very good prospect. Some really good Muay Thai in a arsenal, and a good fight set up there against Carol Rosa. We've got Alves Brenner against Esteban Ribovics. Obviously Ribovics had a very, very good fight last year against Daniel Zellhuber. He's coming off a loss this year, but if he can get a win, he should be back into the hype train that he was on around or just before or just after this time last year it was. And then in the co-main event of this, we've got Mateusz Rebecki versus Chris Duncan. Rebecki as well had another fight of the year contender last year against Mitibek Oralby, against Chris Duncan, who had a very good submission at UFC London against Jordan Vucinic. Very, very good fight for these guys in their last ones, and I think this is a very, very good fight in terms of the matchmaking. It's going to be a great one. I'm not sure who's going to win it. I think it will be a close one, but if Duncan can get the submission game in, no reason why he can't go on to win it. And then in the main event of this Apex card, we've got Amir Albazi versus Tatsuro Taira. I think, personally, my prediction, I think Taira is going to win this fight. Obviously, Albazi, a very capable fighter. His ranking, should he be this high? I mean, he fought Kai Kara France to get this high into the rankings. Taira obviously coming off of his first loss in his career, but he's had quite a long time off. It was a split decision loss, and the interesting one about this fight is that Pantoja has basically faced everyone now in the division. Obviously, he's got a fight against Joshua Van coming up later in the year, but one of these guys win and they could be into that title fight. Whoever wins, I'm sure they'll know that there is a title fight. I think the 5-rounder definitely suits them. The 5-rounders with the flyweights are always good because obviously they don't have the knockout power as much as some of the higher up divisions, but they do have the cardio and the ability to go all 5 rounds. And I think this is a really good fight, some great matchmaking, and I think it'll be a really interesting one back at the Apex. It's time to move on to the next card. It's the second Apex card in a row. There's some it's probably the worst card, let's put it that way, of the cards in the month of August. There's some interesting fights here, but I think we've got to go straight to the main card where it does get a little bit more interesting. Eric Anders versus Christian Leroy Duncan kicks off this main card here. We've got Leroy Duncan, who won at UFC London, so hopefully that'll be a good fight against Anders. We've got Andre Philly, who is a fan favourite, returning I think he's just had his first child, which is obviously great for him. It's like it's a John Anik, piece of commentary there. But he faces Christian Rodriguez. Obviously, the fans will be rooting for Philly in this fight, but the way it goes, we'll have to see. We've got Yasmin Lucindo, who's fighting against Angela Hill. Lucindo, if I'm not mistaken, fought at 313 against Andrea Lemos, who is fighting. Lemos is now fighting, I can't remember who it is. She's fighting someone. I don't know who it is, but she's been booked for a fight. But Lucindo, obviously on the losing end of that fight. Angela Hill, she's 40 something years of age now, but she's still got a ranking. If she can get a win in this fight, who knows what's in store for her. She had a fight not too long ago, and I think this is a good bit of matchmaking for that strawweight division. In the co-main event, this fight has actually been cancelled. Park Hyun-sung is now coming in for Alex Perez against Steve Urseg off the back of 3 losses in a row. They were obviously making him fight up a little bit. Would have been a decent fight against Perez, still fighting up, but now he's got some competition where, obviously it's an undefeated prospect, but he's got some competition where, he should be able to get the win and get his career back on track. It's what he needs, a bit more confidence, but whether or not he gets the fight, the win, we'll have to see in that fight. And then it's Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Hernandez. There's been a bit of an interesting time in the middleweight division, in the kind of the mid-table. So obviously Dolidze fought Vittori, and then Hernandez against Allen. The winners of that fight and out of them 2 fights are now fighting each other in this fight here. And then we've got in the losers, it was Vittori versus Allen, which actually happened at UFC 318. Allen coming out with the win in that in the end. And now we'll have to see what goes on in this fight here. Dolidze obviously has gone off the back of a good win against Vittori, and whether or not he can get the win here against Hernandez, we'll have to see. It's a good bit of matchmaking to top off this next Apex card as we move on to the big one. What a card this is looking to be, and we'll start nice and slow with these prelims. Obviously, we've got some interesting fights here. Karine Silva versus JJ Aldrich in the flyweight division, 11th versus 14th. Good bit of matchmaking there. We've got Brian Battle versus Nursultan Rozaboyev. Battle coming off of a win, so is Rozaboyev. But going to be a very good fight, that one in the middleweight division, and who gets the win, we'll have to see. We've got Edson Barboza making his return against Drakkar Klose. Hopefully Barboza can go and get that win. Obviously not the fighter he once used to be, but still going, which is always nice. We've got Chase Hooper fighting against Alexander Hernandez. That will be a tough fight for him, but I think Chase Hooper is on a real good bit of form at the moment. Real exciting prospect at lightweight, at just 25 years of age, if I'm not mistaken. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes down for him as we move on to the next part of the prelims. We've got Jessica Andrade versus Lupi Godinez. It's going to be another interesting one at strawweight, the 5th rank on the line, obviously just outside the title contention. The winner of this could face the fight we were talking about previously, and was it Lucindo and Angela Hill, or was it one of the different ones? I can't remember, quite remember, but there was definitely one we were on about before. But yeah, it's an interesting bit of matchmaking there, 5th versus 11th, and who knows who's going to win in that one. We've got over to the middleweights, Gerald Meerschaert versus Mikhail Olazaychuk. Olazaychuk obviously coming off the back of an impressive win. He had a bit of a rough time, but an impressive win against Cedric Dumas, and now against Meerschaert. I think he could get the win in this one in the middleweight division. Who knows how far he'll go after that. And then Bobby King Green returns against Diego Ferreira. Whichever fight King Green is in, it's always going to be an interesting one, and that is an interesting one to end off the prelims as we move on to the main card. Only 4 out of 5 fights on here. The co-main event at the time of recording has not been announced yet. If you want my prediction and my say on the co-main event, make sure to go and join the Discord when that is released. Now, it is expected that it probably will be Movsar versus Aaron Pico. It depends. We don't really know what the injury with Movsar is, but if it is that for 5 rounds, it's not a bad one. I guess we'll start with the first fight on this card. We've got Tim Elliott versus Kai Asakura. Kai Asakura returning off the back of his title fight when he was picked up from Rizin to fight Alejandro Pantoja. This is a really good fight. I do think Asakura will get the win. He did look impressive in the time that he was in that fight with Pantoja. He's facing an absolute beast. But in the time that he wasn't there. He did not look too bad. We've got to give him his credit. So yeah, I do think Asakura can get the win here against Tim Elliott. We've got Jared Cannonier versus Michael Venom Page. Another absolute banger of a fight. These two are going to have an absolute war in that fight for as long as it lasts. I do think MVP will get the win in this one. Obviously, Jared Cannonier did fraud check a little bit Gregory Rodriguez, but I think Michael Venom Page with that unorthodox style is clearly becoming a bit of a tough thing for these guys in these two divisions that he's in. I think if he does stay at middleweight though, it could be good for him. I think fighters are, I guess they're happier when they don't have to cut as much weight, and he got a win against Shara Bullet in his last one. It's clear that it's obviously a big step up in competition, and Jared Cannonier He's still fighting down in the division. He didn't want to fight up. I think he wanted a Sean Strickland fight, but it is a good fight against Michael Venom Page, and if MVP can get the win, then he's only a few fights away from a potential title shot in the welterweight fight there. As you can see, Jeff Neal versus Carlos Prates. This fight was obviously scheduled for UFC 314. Obviously got cancelled because Neal pulled out, but this is going to be a very, very good fight. It's a good fight for Prates, obviously coming off the back of a loss against Ian Machado Gary. I do think it will be a win for Prates in this one, but Jeff Neal will obviously put up a good fight for as long as that one does last. So good fight, especially for Prates as well, to get his not his career, but I guess to get back in the win column and restart his push to the top of the welterweight division, which is definitely something he'll be looking to do. And then the fight we've been waiting the whole video for. This fight, genuinely, this fight is the fight I've been most excited for all year. I think this fight is going to be absolutely incredible. I'm telling you right now, if one of these guys does not pull out, it's going to be incredible. And the reason I say that is because we just don't know what's going to happen. We really, really don't. The heart says that Khamzat is going to win by round one submission, but the head says that DDP is going to win somehow. We don't know how, but he is going to win somehow. This is going to be such a good fight. The opening betting line does favour Khamzat, but I think a lot of people at first were counting out DDP, I should say, but starting to realise that DDP is a very good fighter. Whoever wins in this fight, I wouldn't be too surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, but it is going to be an absolute banger. I mean, if it goes all 5 rounds, which I don't think it would, but if it did go 5 rounds, what a fight it would be. Absolute war in there. I just don't know what's going to happen. I really, really can't tell you. My prediction, if I had to give you a prediction, I would say Khamzat by round 1 submission. But DDP, as he's proven with those 2 title defenses so far, he is a very, very capable fighter, and this is going to be an absolutely banger fight. However it goes, we'll have to see in Chicago, August 16th. What a fight on the cards. As we move on now to the final card of August, it's UFC Shanghai, which is looking like a very, very interesting card on this undercard here. The first few interesting fights, we've got Sumandeji, who returns in the flyweight bout there against Kevin Buchas. Lona Kavanagh versus Charles Johnson. That is another flyweight fight, and that is going to be a very, very good fight. Charles Johnson he's the prospect forward checker. I guess he's starting to the narrative he's trying to create. But Lona Kavanagh obviously had a very good fight in UFC London, so it'll be interesting to see what goes down with that. I do think Kavanagh can get the win. He's had quite a bit of time since UFC London to continue to improve, and I think this is really good matchmaking for the two of them. We've got Marco Tulio versus Michel Pereira. Tulio off a win, Pereira off a loss. So it's a very, very good fight. More good matchmaking there that we do see as we move on to the main card. Now I'm going to put these the 3 interesting fights here. There's still some fights to be announced on this one. I think what's his name? I can't remember his name now, but there's one more Chinese fighter who's still to be announced on this. But the 3 fights that we've got here, really, really good fights. Really kind of they have quite significance to be honest. We've got Sergey Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. Now Cortez Acosta fought at UFC 316, so it is quite a quick turnaround for him, just 2 months between this last fight and this one. But he had a good fight in his last one. Arguably, it could have been closer on the scorecards than it really was, but he did get the win in the end, and he called out Pavlovich straight away. Pavlovich accepted the fight, and we got a fight. Good from both of them to decide to get in there. Now Pavlovich coming off of a win against Jairzinho Rosenstrike at UFC Saudi Arabia. He's coming to China for this fight against Cortez Acosta now. The heavyweight division is starting to flow a bit more slowly but steadily. We've got an interesting fight coming up with it's Jailton Almeida versus Volkov, but Pavlovich and Cortez Acosta are also in this equation, you know, as to who gets the fight. We've also got a bit lower down Derek Lewis versus Blades, which could be a potential fight to make, but you know, the fights are starting to open up again, and the winner of this one could potentially get the title fight after the winner of Volkov versus Jailton Almeida. Now that one is an interesting one, and this one's an interesting one as well. I do think Pavlovich, people are forgetting how good he really was, but if he can go and bring out that knockout power, he was scary. He was a very scary prospect, and a rematch against Tom Aspinall could go a little bit different if it does happen again. But don't count out what Cortez Acosta can go and do. That is a very, very good fight on this Shanghai card. And on this Shanghai card, we have got a co-main event of Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. It's a nice fight. It is a very nice fight. I don't think anyone was really expecting this. We were obviously waiting for Aljo to make his return. He's not fought since 310, that lost very close fight against Movsar Evloev, and Brian Ortega obviously not been active in a little while. I think this is going to be a really interesting one. It's a very make or break fight for the two of them. I would say they have got to win if they want to stay in the title picture, and I do think Aljamain Sterling does still have it. Obviously he's in a division up from where he was formerly the champion. It's obviously the natural weight class for Brian Ortega, and I do think that Aljo will get the win in this fight. It's going to be a good one though, to see what goes down. And then in the main event, we've got Johnny Walker versus Zhang Mingyong. Now, I don't know what to think about this one really. Zhang Mingyong, obviously a very exciting prospect. It's going to be good to see him in action, but you can tell what they're doing by giving him the guy with the worst chin ever in the UFC in Johnny Walker. This fight might last about 30 seconds. We might just be seeing a Derek Lewis versus Taliesin Teixeira all over again, but it's a very good fight. It is some decent matchmaking. I think Zhang is just a little bit outside of the title picture just yet, but by getting this win over Johnny Walker, if he can do it in convincing fashion and continue that first round knockout record, it's at like 18 wins or 19 wins and all by first round finish. If he can go and continue that, then maybe he does get himself into that title picture. Who knows? Johnny Walker could go and throw a few surprises in there for us, but I don't think it'll be the case. I think Zhang Mingyong does get this done, and it's a very, very good fight to have on the main event for this Shanghai card. The first time the UFC returns to Shanghai, and if you're a UK fan, we do get this card in around 12 or 1 p.m. The UK time, which is always nice. So there you have it. That is the preview for August for the UFC. Some very, very good fights we've got coming up, and you know, it's an absolute banger of a summer we've already had some great fights. We've got more coming up, and it's going to set us up well for the fights we have coming up in September and October. Absolute bangers. If you did enjoy that video, it's a bit of a different type of video, but if you did enjoy it and have made it all this way, I do appreciate it. Make sure to go and join the Discord down below, where obviously we are discussing the UFC and everything that is going on. I'll leave you with this little tune. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all again for another video. Thank you. Bye bye.